All right. So we're going to be picking up on the section called This Curved Electric Universe, which is on page 241. And I'm happy to read, or if either of you two feel called to do so. Anybody have a preference? Read. Great. Why don't you read, BJ?
Okay, this curved electric universe. Light comes from darkness, and darkness from light. Incandescent suns of white-hot light are born from cold black darkness, and cold black space is born from white-hot suns. All suns are generated into incandescence by two black rivers of evacuated light, which flow centripetally inward toward their still centers by the way of their poles. Conversely, darkness of space is radiated from two incandescent rivers of white light, which flow centrifugally from suns' equators. Thus are the four arms of all spiral nebulae formed as two pairs of opposites interchanging with each other to become the other two. The two black arms belong to gravity, and the two white ones to vacuity. This electric universe is curved. Motion is spiral. Where motion ceases, curvature ceases. Cleavages between wave field boundary planes of crystals separate them into their individual crystal forms. Motion cannot pass through those planes, for there is naught but stillness there. Motion is repeated in all wave fields by reflected extension from wave field boundary planes. Curvature is imperative under such conditions, for opposed pressures resist each other, and each must bend to the other to find passage for its own expression of force. Motion and curvature simultaneously begin and end when opposition begins and ends. Each wave field is like a separate projection machine in which its own curved motion picture universe is dually projected upon its self-measured zero screen of space. The incandescent sphere of light, which centers it, pictures the forms of desire in the measure of desire for manifestation. This curved universe consists of lenses and mirrors of light which reflect, bend, curve, concentrate, and decentrate light into its countless forms. Any action anywhere is repeated everywhere by and through countless mirror planes of wave fields and the lenses of space. Concentrated spheres, such as the Earth and Sun, are surrounded by layers of light of equal pressures. Clouds float around the Earth in them. The reason they float in curves parallel to the Earth is because of these spherical equipotential planes of pressures which curve as the Earth curves. Curved pressures of light act as lenses to multiply and divide light radially. Light rays which pass through curved planes concentrate toward a point when projected through light lenses of space in the convex direction, and decentrate when they pass through in the concave direction. The very fact of gravity and radiativity are accounted for by this fact. Every object which falls towards the Earth falls radially towards its center because of this fact. No two men who stand upright in balance with gravity stand parallel to each other. Lines drawn through the feet and head of any two men standing in either hemisphere would form a cone with its base in the heavens and its apex at the earth's center. Rain falling vertically from a cloud falls conically. The area of the base of the cone in the cloud is greater than its conical measurement on the earth. The electric potential of rain increases as it falls because of the multiplication of pressures by the lenses of light which surround the earth. For the same reason, a man weighs less as he ascends a mountain and regains it when descending. Light lenses subtract from his potential by multiplying its volume while he ascends, and multiplies it when he descends by subtracting from its volume. Curvature of light wave axes by contraction or expansion between planes of zero curvature is the cause of all pressures, all pattern, all of the attributes of matter, such as density, tenuity, melting point, brittleness, conductivity, and countless other effects which are voided when curvature ceases in planes of rest in wave field boundaries, or in points of rest around which motion rotates spirally.
Okay, that's it. That's the end of that section. Thank you, BJ.
You're welcome.
So I'm pretty sure that this is the first time that we encounter this new metaphysical object, the lenses of light, the spherical shaped lenses of light. And so now we're getting another sort of concept, a geometrical concept to go along with our little kit. We've been studying the cube, which is the cube and the sphere are the two primary metaphysical objects that are responsible for the dynamics of the electric universe and for all the light mechanics within it. And so here, Walter Russell is I'm not sure if he's introducing it, but he's for the first time kind of explaining some of the primary dynamics of these light lenses.
Yeah.
And probably
it seems like
Go ahead, BJ.
It seems like there's two basic kind of gestures that he's talking about. Maybe there's more, but there's two at least that come to mind. One is the spiraling arms, as demonstrated in figure 38. And then there's the cones, the radial cones. So I definitely didn't get everything, but I'm like, okay, I can see that. I can see the truth of the radial arms and the spiral arms and the radial cones.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course those two gestures, as you called them, BJ, so nicely, they relate to each other, because the spiral arms, as we can see probably most clearly in figure 38, called the Four Rivers of Light, there are two black spirals, which have an inward direction towards the center of the galaxy or the shape, and then two white spiral arms with an outward direction. And so the potential, so starting with the black arms, the potential is increasing as the sort of black light is on its inward journey. So it's the same dynamic as the cones he's describing. So going from the base of the cone towards the apex of the cone, there's an increase in potential or an increase in incandescence or a concentration of light towards the center, towards, the coalescence of matter, of solar systems, of suns and galaxies and atoms. And then in the other direction, from the apex of cones or from the center of solar systems towards the edge, there's a decentration of light and a reduction of potential of energy. There's a vacuity going from incandescence to blackness, to vacuity. So those are sort of the basic dynamics he's describing.
So those are galaxies on 242.
Yes, those are, I think, drawn. Walter Russell drew them from photographs of actual galaxies. He doesn't mention which ones they are. But yes, the resolution of the images is a little low, so it's not simple to see what he's describing. But he's claiming that, and of course, I'd like to kind of like look at the photographs of galaxies we have now with such powerful telescopes and just kind of pay attention to what he says is all spiral nebula, including these that he's showing in these figures, have two spiraling arms that are of the white light, and where the suns in those systems would be kind of on their outward travel, and then two spiraling arms of black, of darkness, of a darker band, that are on their inward journey towards the center.
And would those be the equivalent of black holes, the black journey inward? Is this the beginning and ending of the creation?
That's a great question. I mean, I think that at the galactic scale, it would be a part of the galaxies or the galactic logos is, in breath and out breath.
Right.
And, I don't know, my understanding of the black hole is, it's sort of the end, or it's what resolves the sort of the completion, of a galactic experience when all the matter in the galaxy coalesces back into the center. But I've also heard that black holes are present through the whole experience. They center the galaxy. So I don't know a whole lot. Walter Russell doesn't really get into it, as far as I know, the black hole dynamics of black holes. But I think that seems like a reasonable, assumption, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and it looks like, it would seem like what you just said, that there were black holes present at all times, that there would be the coalescing in different places in space at all what we would call time, but in what you might call the eternal present, it would be always happening. And then at some point, the whole creation does that and coalesces and begins again in the chaos and the seemingly timeless period of first density.
Yeah, right. And I guess that assuming that's what happens, that would correspond with the Big Bang and what they call the Big Crunch, the beginning of the universe and the end. Have you heard that term? It's actually,
no, I haven't heard the crunch before. That's
actually what they call it. There's some cosmologists that theorize that there is a counterpose to the Big Bang, which will be eventually. Currently, they say that the universe, they observe that it's expanding. So the Big Bang is still kind of like generally, all the solar systems or galaxies are going apart, and eventually they'll reach a point where they stabilize, and then they'll make their reverse travel back in. There'll be a reverse to the Big Bang.
Crunch is a scientific term.
Yeah, right.
Sounds like a candy bar.
It's about as scientific as the Big Bang.
Right, I guess so.
And I've also, I think Walter Russell actually says about the Big Bang that it's not how he understands that the universe, I think he talks about the universe is constantly creating and decreating, that like there wasn't a beginning of it all. There was no beginning. It's eternal.
Right.
But I don't know, because it's a little bit ambiguous from Ra's perspective too, as I read Ra, because there's only one time when Ra talks about the primal logos. And, I'm not quite clear on, is there a logoic level that's one step up from galaxies that actually is the mind of the whole universe, or the generator of the whole universe as a coherent system. And I guess that's kind of the crux of this whole question, is like, is there a primal logos from which the galactic logoi are birthed?
Well,
Or
apparently, I think so.
Yeah.
And it's also called the Great Central Sun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beginning of all the other logoi, like our Milky Way galaxy logos.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a mystery to me too, though, because when I the people who have been able to build models of the whole universe, based on our capacity to model them based on our all the data from all the telescopes and stuff. From what it looks like, it's kind of like it looks a little bit like the what am I trying to say, like neurons in the brain, like it's a web. It doesn't seem to have a center like galaxies do. Like galaxies have a very clear center to their spiraling structure.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as I've seen, I don't detect that in the universe. But maybe it's such a vast pattern that we just haven't been able to observe that yet.
Well, Ross said all begins and ends in mystery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just take that at face value. And
Yeah.
we probably can't explain it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think so.
Yeah. And the scale of, beyond our galaxy is so vast. I mean, already our galaxy is mind-bogglingly large to me.
Well, infinite. Can you begin to grasp the concept of infinity?
Yeah.
I think my only spiritual question when I was a kid, like about 12 years old, I said, well, when you come to the end of the universe, then what?
Yes. That's
Yeah.
fascinating, Jim. I was 13 or maybe 14 when I had my own experience of that. I remember laying in bed and contemplating infinity, and that exact dynamic of like, what happens when you get to the end? Wait, you don't get to the end. But if you don't get to the end, then how can that be?
Where's
and I
the
remember
end?
just like puzzling with that, and it just really affected me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
DJ, what did you have to say?
Oh, I was just saying the same thing he was saying.
Oh, okay.
If you don't get to the end, where's the end? Yeah. Yeah, I was just concurring.
Well, I think at some point Ra mentioned that the appearance of UFOs had a general purpose of getting people to consider infinity, so
Right.
that would be the beginning, say, of a spiritual journey.
Yeah. Catalyzing in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And these galaxies also kind of look like UFOs, at least
Yeah.
the positive ones.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. The sort of the lens-shaped galaxy does look a lot like a saucer, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah. And I suspect that the physics of that is deeply connected. I imagine that's not just an aesthetic choice, that's actually connected to the dynamics of light and how the craft in fact interface with with energy and light to move.
Yeah. And now I'm wondering, and I have no idea, I just asked the question. Ra mentions the upward spiraling line of light.
Mm-hmm.
They said it's not a direction, it's going back to its source. So is that upward spiraling line of light connected to these spirals that we're talking about? Or what part do they play in the secrets of light?
Yes. Okay, so let's see. Let me see which if you flip to page 248, and look at figures 50 and 51. You can see how the spiraling lines of light that Walter Russell describes as the mother and father light, the father light is traveling in a direction towards the center of suns or photons or whatever scale we're talking about, galaxies. And the mother light is traveling from the center of suns towards the edge of space. And I believe that those are either the exact same thing as the upward and downward spiraling lines of light that Ra is referring to, or they're analogous to it. Like they're the physical analog to a spiritual or metaphysical spiral that centers mind, or or maybe exists in time space. But I think that the pattern and the dynamics of those two interpenetrating spirals, I mean, as far as I can tell, is exactly what Ra is referring to. So humans, mind, body, spirit complexes, we as people, we have these dynamics. These are going on in us too.
Right.
So we have, we are sons in a way. We are the dynamics that take place that Walter Russell describes at the photon level, the atom level, the planetary level, the solar level. They take place in us too, and also in trees and in other living beings. So these interpenetrating spirals, which I believe are the upward and downward. And again, it's not, Walter Russell says it too. It doesn't mean up and down in the way that we conventionally talk about it. It's more like in and out. And in and out of what? Well, towards the center of all creation, and outward towards manifestation. So the upward spiraling light, the way I take that to be, is back towards God, back towards the source, towards the center point.
Right. Yeah.
And the downward spiraling light is traveling out towards manifestation, towards the creation, the created universe, towards the edge of space.
And then even the densities themselves. Dense refers to how densely packed light is in each succeeding density.
Right.
So that there is more light as you go through the octave back into unity with the creator.
That's right.
And that light is also moving. Don mentioned that the everything that we think is a solid object is actually a photon spinning at various angles of rotation and speeds of rotation. So we don't have really solid object. There's more space within objects than there is matter.
Walter Russell says, and I take this to mean in third density, that it's about 1,000,000 to 1 ratio. There's 1,000,000 times in volume more space surrounding each unit of what we would call matter. That's a big delta. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Mostly space. And then I believe that as we go higher and higher in the densities of consciousness, it's not necessarily that the ratio changes. I think that it's almost like that all of space just becomes more pregnant with the truth of oneness.
Right. That's what Ra called the plenum, and the plenum was not empty. It was full of light, I guess.
Right.
Realization.
Right. Well, and even in Walter Russell's model, the 1,000,000 to 1, that million, the million units of volume of space is not empty, but the energy, the love light, the prana, the basic fundamental intelligent energy that creates all things is just it's very diffuse. It's spread out, like it's very, very non-dense.
Right.
But it's still filled with the same thing that suns are made of and atoms are made of, but it's just spread out very, very, very fine, very subtle, but it is full. Yeah. If let's see, let me see if I can find another diagram we could. So on page 262, this is a really interesting, I know we're jumping ahead, but I think it relates to what we're talking about right now.
Oh,
So this is one of Walter Russell's major contributions to science. He re-envisioned the periodic chart, the periodic table of elements, not in an abstract table like the Mendeleev table we typically see it in, but in fact, as these elements are organized along what he calls the, this is the wave, this is the octave wave of the whole galaxy. So this is a map of all matter and how it comes into existence from the birth of an octave. He calls it an octave, and how it ends in the octave. And he says when the octave ends, it begins at the beginning again. So it sounds very familiar, right? Sounds exactly like Rod describes it. But this is specifically looking at the elements. And so again, as we start in the first, second, third octave, I think it's actually not until the transition from the third to the fourth octave that elements that we are aware of, in modern science, on the line between the third and fourth octave, we see hydrogen. Well, our science tells us that the hydrogen is the first atom, the first element. But Walter Russell says, no, that's actually the first one that we've yet been able to detect. There's much subtler elements that exist in the first, second, and third octave. And these are octaves of elements, which aren't they don't overlay one-to-one with the octaves of consciousness, the densities of consciousness. But the pattern is parallel. The pattern is similar, because as you move along this octave, the elements get more and more dense. They get more and more energized. They get more and more wound up until we get into the heavier nuclear, what we call the nuclear isotopes in the 8th and 9th octave. So I'm just bringing that up because this is another fascinating parallel between what Ra teaches and the concept of the octave and the concept of light becoming more and more dense as we travel further along the octave. And here Walter Russell has created this map of the octave of the elements. And with this creation, he actually was able to identify elements that had not yet been discovered by science. That after he created this map were discovered. So he discovered elements that had not yet been discovered, which is interesting.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, just through the patterns.
Exactly, just through the patterns and understanding how the dynamics of light wind up into matter, into the elements.
Yeah.
He was like, we haven't discovered these, and then sure enough, they were discovered. And unfortunately, he was not given credit for them.
Well, it kind of makes sense because he didn't discover, I imagine he didn't discover them the way they're normally discovered. Like you have to see it and point to it and prove it or something.
Yeah.
Rather than I see the pattern, there must be something there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's right. So let's see, I had highlighted a few things from what BJ read that I wanted to just make sure, or just kind of get your ideas on and see if it was landing. So the first thing I highlighted was on page 243. And it's in the second paragraph, it says, this electric universe is curved, motion is spiral. And I know he's written that at least once before. And it just occurred to me to introduce the distinction between the relative and the absolute. I think in some metaphysical, in some spiritual lineages, there's this distinction between the relative and the absolute. The absolute being, the unmanifest, the one infinite creator in its unmanifest form. The relative being the manifest reality. And we are in that, having this illusory experience of separation, being able to talk to each other, be in relationship, have the experience of individuality and these specific things that we're interested in. That's part of the relative. And so I think what this is saying is this electric universe, well, the electric universe is the relative universe. The electric universe is the portion of, the creation where the infinite creator is exploring its infinite thought. It's exploring the original thought. And so in that context, in the relative context, that's the electric universe, the manifest universe. And all electric phenomena, as Walter Russell describes it, is curved, and all motion is spiral. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think the electric universe corresponds to time-space?
So this is
Or space-time. No, I got it backwards.
to
The
space-time.
electric
Yes.
universe is space-time.
Yes. Yes. This is a particular area of interest to me. I'm wanting to have a stronger correlation between these two systems. From the best I can make of it, which when I see it out loud doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's almost like time space exists inside the mirror planes that exist inside of the wave field. Because what Walter Russell said, not in The Secret of Light, but in another book, is that when God thinks, the action of thought like literally makes like a percussive impact on the interior planes of the wave field. And then that is what creates the waves that travel in their curved motion and then produces the spirals. Which I found that to be fascinating. And to me, correlating it to the law of one, it's like, thought precedes all form. And so God, including, our co-creation with God, time space is the realm of idea. I think it feels like the realm of, where we're able to like be in pure imagination. And then space-time is where those ideas get explored, get manifest in form so that we can sense them and see them and hear them and taste them and touch them and interact with them. So it's almost like time space is the inverted cube. The cube of space is the cube of space-time. The wave field of space-time is a model of space-time, and time space, I hope I'm saying this right. Space-time is the wave field cube that we've been looking at, and time space is an inversion of that. And it exists within the dimensionless space of the interior inertial planes, the three interior planes of the wave field.
Yeah.
The inner planes. I think I've mentioned this before, but it's literally in this model, the three inner planes of the model that Walter Russell is drawing here.
Yeah.
And the outer planes are the boundary condition of space-time, the edge. And of course it's fractal. They're all nested at all different scales. These cubes are all nested within each other. There's not just one of them. There's one that surrounds every atom. Every coherent system of light has a cube to it. But it's bounded by the outer planes. And I think space-time represents the inner planes. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me.
It is fascinating.
And then a little further down on that same page, 243, the first sentence of the last paragraph, it says, each wave field is like a separate projection machine. And to me, it's like, it reminds me of the concept of logoi. Like each logos kind of creates its own kind of individuated space to explore its own thought, its own portion of the infinite idea, God's infinite idea. And it does that within its own separate projection machine. So the illusion is the projection machine. We're in a big hall, a literal hall of mirrors that is the projection machine.
Right.
And each logos has its own projection machine. We're in it. I'm in mine, you are in yours, and
it's our playground for spiritual progression.
exactly.
Moving through this area that's an illusion, but it has a purpose of introducing us to the reality of oneness.
That's right.
Yeah.
Precisely.
And fascinatingly, in these kinds of conversations, I find so much parallel to the work, inner like self-discovery work and thought work, like when like I think like I dive into how all of our minds are projection machines,
Hmm.
and how we can get caught up in the thoughts and projections of past and future and illusion there, and back to the the reality of like uh there's so much more. What did you say, 1,000,000 to 1
Hmm.
space to form or something
Hmm.
like that. um there's so much truth there too, in terms of when we're focused on a thought or a projected idea, um we lose track of space and like coming back to reality, coming back to like sanity or a balanced way of being. Through processing emotions, we're often so much more connected to the truth of spaciousness rather than the limited form. And it just feels so parallel. Like
Right.
I continue to find all of these parallels of like in processing emotions, being with the emotion as though it's a thing, um like a ball. We could say, like, okay, here's this emotion, and then it's surrounded by space, and when I can hold both, the emotion can like process itself, or the emotion and it's like moving, and then I surround it with stillness and it processes itself. Like it's so similar. It just feels so, yeah. It's fascinating how the inner emotional landscape journey just mirrors so much of this. Yeah. I wonder how much like that's literally what's happening too, and we're in touch with it in the self-discovery journey. Yeah, I'm really curious about that. I want to like I want to lift the veil sometimes and just like, wait, what's happening? How is
Right.
why is it so the same? Why do these metaphors, or like why can I use all of these metaphors of material universe and it like magically processes emotions? Because
Hmm.
it does.
Hmm. Well, one area for you to keep your eye out for a correlation that bridges what you're talking about is the spirit cycle of the archetypical mind. The first card in that cycle is the matrix of spirit, and Ra calls the matrix of spirit the darkest of dark. It's like pure darkness. And I think that that's the mirror, the outer mirror planes. There's no light to them. It's just a void of pure potential. And then the card 2, the potentiator of spirit, is sudden and fiery light, which is the emergence of light, of form from the creator's mind instantly,
Yeah.
out of nothing. And I suspect that there's a direct correlation between this model of the cube and the sphere and the spirit cycle of the archetypical mind. I haven't completed that. I'm still studying, both of these and trying to orient to both of these systems, but I suspect that the spirit cycle is kind of the bridge between what you're talking about, of the inner experience, of knowingness, of our sense of our, of awareness, our capacity to be conscious and contemplate, and the actual, the sort of, the projection machine that we're inside of, that we're doing that work within. I'm not sure about that, but I'm just mentioning it because I think it's a fascinating area for further contemplation and study.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think Ross said the spirit was the least distorted of the mind body spirit complex. It was the most in harmony with the way things really are.
Right. Right. and also the most subtle, right? The most the least motile. I think they say the spirit complex is the least motile of the mind, the body, and the spirit.
Which is like
And
least movable. Is that
Yeah,
what
the
motile
least
is?
moving, the least, yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
What were you going to say, Jim?
well, I was thinking about another aspect of the spirit, Ross, that it could be used as a shuttle for contact with intelligent infinity or the creator.
Yeah.
Which would suggest in that case it would be motile.
Hmm.
It could be either.
Right. Well,
Hmm.
one thought that I've had about that, we're going to look at another diagram. Okay, so figure 49 on page 247. Let me know when you're there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Ready.
Okay. So here what we're looking at is we're looking at the cube, which is also called the wave field. And then we're seeing simultaneously inside the cube, we're seeing the single S-shaped curve from corner to corner of cube. That's called the wave axis. And Walter Russell says that's still. The wave axis is still. There's no movement at that point. But it centers the two spirals. It centers the mother, father, light. And so once again, this is just conjecture, but I've had the idea that may be the spirit shuttle. Because what it's doing is it's connecting the very center of the inertial planes, the center of the cube, where everything, that's the source point, that's where everything comes from. It's connecting that and all of manifestation. And so it's like anything that enters into manifestation is literally connected at all times back to its source, back to its center.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that kind of describes the spirit shuttle. That kind of just describes like how we're always connected to God and to source through the spirit. And the spirit doesn't itself move, but this is a bit of a paradox because it does have dimension. So there isn't motion, there isn't movement in that shaft, in that wave axis shaft, but all motion is organized around that shaft. So the spirals are always moving and being organized around that shaft.
Mm-hmm.
So the shaft might be the spirit shuttle, and that's how we are. That's how we make contact with intelligent infinity. Which is back on the other side of back on the other side of source, unmanifest.
Yeah.
Have you all heard of Thomas Merton?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was at the Abbey of Gethsemane here in Kentucky. And at one point, at 4th and Muhammad Ali streets, he had his epiphany, his awakening, where he saw every person on the street as filled with light. And there's a plaque there at that place where he had that epiphany that commemorates it.
Wow.
And what do you make of that experience? Do you get a visual of it, or do you connect with it?
It
Can you
just
imagine
seems
it?
like, I mean, people have various kinds of spiritual awakenings and oneness with the creator. That's just what I think is probably happening with him, or happened, that he just had that epiphany right there. He saw more of the nature of reality in a purer sense. I mean, I'm sure there are other degrees where you could see the whole creation that way, or maybe, but he saw every person that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like all of a sudden, like a whole layer of distortion just lifted, and all of a sudden he saw a more pure, like, depiction of what's really going on.
Yeah. And just as a interesting aside, Carla's dad and Thomas Merton formed the Louisville Jazz Society back in 1961.
What?
Oh, wow.
That is fascinating. I had no idea. What a neat connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a neat connection.
Right, because he's a well-known mystical Christian, right? Thomas Merton.
Yeah. He wrote the
Mhm.
Seven-Story Mountain, I believe. Yeah.
So was Carla's dad also was he in the mystical, went to the mystical path?
No, he was a jazz drummer.
I see.
He was I think some sort of an engineer during the day and a jazz drummer at night.
That
That's
is
so
cool.
cool.
That's really, really neat.
Our son is a jazz drummer too.
Oh, right.
Burgeoning, I think.
Yeah, he's
Right.
just beginning his
Cool.
musical career. Shall we continue to read?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Where are we?
so let's see. I think we are picking up on page 246.
Yes.
Okay. Well, there it is. How about if I read some?
Perfect. I would love that.
Spiral in nature. Within the wave field, centripetal spirals wind light waves into spheres, and then cease to be spirals. Centrifugal spirals unwind spheres into cubes, and also cease to be spirals. Centripetal and centrifugal spirals are electrically sexed mates. Their interchange borns all forms, and likewise voids all forms. Centripetal spirals are electropositive. What is electropositive?
It's charging or condensing or part of the father light.
Oh, okay. That's part of the sexual part. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They wind light inward into incandescent spheres. They are of the father light which refolds unfolding forms. They begin their half cycles at cube boundary planes of wave fields and end them at centers of spheres. Figure 47 diagrams the 6 mirror planes which reflect gravitating light centripetally inward through the poles. Centrifugal spirals are electronegative. They unwind light of incandescent spheres into cold black light of space. They are of the mother light, which unfolds formlessness into form. They begin their half cycles at centers of rest in spheres and end them in the reprojections mirrors of wave field planes. Figure 48 diagrams the 6 mirror planes, which project radiating light centrifugally outward from equators. Figure 49 diagrams the screen of space, which simulates motion because of the two-way projection of oppositely conditioned lights inward and outward through each other to create the illusion of motion, change, sequence, and time. See also figure 39. Spheres and spherical systems, like carbon, are born where centripetal and centrifugal spirals meet. Matter registers the potential of the position of its birth. For that reason, it floats in equipotential orbits appropriate to its position in its wave field, together with all units of its system. In the electric current, electronic systems are born where the familiar loops of force occur around a charged wire, figure 50. Figures 51, 52, and 53 diagram electric systems forming at AA. Now, what did that mean? AA, birth of electronic systems.
I think it's in figure 50, there's 2 A's at the top of the picture.
Yeah, I
I
see
think
that.
it's like maybe the line between A and A or something. Maybe you have more clarity on it.
That's right,
Aaron.
BJ. That's how I understand it too.
Okay.
I can't say that I perfectly understand what he's talking about, but I think I generally get the idea. Where the two apices of the spirals, again, there's two spirals traveling in opposite directions, and where
Yeah.
the apices meet, they form a system. They form a coherent nodal point
Oh.
of electricity or of light at AA.
So I guess that's part of the interaction of the two spirals at AA.
Yes.
Okay. The spiral is an incompleted sphere, just as crystal forms are incompleted cubes. Spirals and crystals have individuality, which they lose by voidance in the oneness of spheres and cubes. Individuality is given bodies for the purpose of manifesting separateness and multiplicity. Individuality, separateness, and multiplicity are then voided in oneness. Yeah, right. Individuality in every creating thing is a moment-to-moment record of its unfoldment and refoldment. It is the fruit of cosmic desire for creative expression. It begins when the cycle begins, ends with its ending, and repeats itself in each cycle until the entire cycle of any expressed idea is voided in its completion. Two-way sex-conditioned spirals are consummate individuals of all creation. They condition all bodies with the condition of their bodies. They unfold all idea from stillness of mind knowing into moving form of mind imagining, and refold it into the stillness of mind knowing. They are the electric workers which fulfill desire of mind by interweaving threads of light into pattern forms and recording those pattern forms in the still light, which then centers every spiral pair as the axis of a cone centers the cone. The one centering axis of both spirals is the shaft upon which the dynamic universe rotates. All motion rotates and revolves upon the still centering shafts, and all shafts are two-way extensions of points which lead to and through centers of spheres. The familiar wave line, which records all effects of motion, controls those effects. One can record that wave line, but is not aware of the fact that it is the power extended by the Creator in the measure of desire for power. That's the first place I've seen creator, but it was creation up there. Okay. The wave line is a record of the amount of energy borrowed from its static equator to express any mechanical process, such as the vibration of a harp string, the pulsations of an engine, the cardiogram of one's heartbeat, or the pattern of an earthquake, as recorded by a seismograph, figures 54, 5, 6, 7, and 8. The shaft of a wave is a line drawn through every point upon the surface of a wave-disturbed ocean in a vertical section, where water and sky meet. Around the still shaft of the wave, all motion of the wave spirals to interweave the patterns and forms of desire. All spiral forms must have intense individuality in order to express such amazing varieties of form and pattern. Figure 59. The inside out, outside in turnings of all creating forms is due to the gradual unfolding, refolding principle of nature. This process is controlled by spiral pairs, which are motivated by still centering shafts of magnetic light. Opposed pairs of spirals gradually expand centrifugally to planes meeting at static equators to complete the unfolding half of a cycle. They then contract as the opposite of what they were to complete the other half. During the entire journey, they continue without reversal of direction. A clockwise spiral is always a clockwise spiral during its entire centripetal journey to its apex and its centrifugal journey to its base. The opposed pair which rotate upon the same shaft are anti-clockwise, for both are projected through each other, figure 60. The characteristic unfolding, refolding, inside out, outside in principle of nature causes the integration of matter at poles and disintegration at equators. Matter integrates by the contraction of one pair of spirals around the shafts, which wind it into spheres by the way of their poles, and disintegrates it by the expansion of the other pair, which unwind it by way of equators. The pair of spirals which wind light waves into spheres continue that winding until holes are bored through the spheres and rings are formed, aided by the centrifugal force exerted by the expansion of the opposing spirals. Rings are the death half of the cycles of spheres. Rings recondense around points in space and rewind as spheres. The majestic ring nebula in Lyra, figure 61, is an outstanding example of the disintegration process of nature. The ring exemplifies the death half of the cycle, and the newly formed sun is its center, the life half. A new body has been born out of the old one as it expanded into the heavens. The heavens abound with new bodies, appearing from old ones, which have disappeared into another form. The Owl Nebula demonstrates this principle by two rings and two stars reborn from them, figure 62. The rings of Saturn will become moons, just as its other rings have become its several other moons. Our own moon was born from a ring from Earth as it expands its bulk by absorbing its oceans and accelerates its rotation, as all of the outer planets have done, figure 63. Shall we continue?
That's a lot already. And there's actually not actually that much reading left because there's a lot of diagrams. So if we can manage maybe one more full page, then I think we should just, yeah, let's go ahead. Let's just go ahead and finish it, and then we'll discuss.
Okay. Jupiter is even now developing belts, which will be thrown off as rings to become moons. These moons will become comets and eventually plunge into the sun, as all things in this solar system likewise do. Figure 64 illustrates the unwinding process by means of which moons free themselves from the bindings of their mother shaft to again seek revolution around the shaft of their beginning in the sun. Disintegration of suns and planets by radiation is accompanied by flattening at their poles. Spheres come into being by prolating and go out by oblating. Ever-increasing speed of rotation around shafts is a cause of this phenomenon. Inner planets rotate very slowly upon their own shafts because they are so close to their mother shaft in the sun, but they revolve very swiftly in their orbits around the sun, figure 65. Mercury, our own moon, and Phobos, the inner moon of Mars, are so close to their mother shaft that they are obliged to revolve swiftly with the same face always towards their primary. The outer planets have so far broken away from the influence of their mother shaft in the sun that their years have materially lengthened, their days conspicuously shortened, and their faces are constantly changing in relation to the sun. Cyclones, waterspouts, and tornadoes develop on our Earth when spirals tighten around their shafts. For the more they thus contract, the greater their speed. When spirals are so wide at their bases that their angles to the Earth's surface are negligible, there is calmness and peace. But when they contract to thin pencils, which furiously speed around centering shafts of magnetic stillness, at 90 degrees to the Earth's surface, they then do inestimable damage. Figure 66.
Yep. Perfect. Great. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for reading that. So yeah, that's a lot. And obviously we won't be able to unpack very much of that. We only have a little bit of time left, but yeah, I kind of want to make I feel inspired to make a summary and bring it back to the concept we were talking about before earlier about the upward and downward spiraling lines of light that Ra talks about. What it seems to me is one of the reasons why Ra calls it an illusion, and Walter Russell also calls our this an illusion, is that in fact there's neither matter nor space. There's only intelligent, what Ra calls intelligent energy. There's only prana. There's only the substance of whatever that substance is, and the two interpenetrating spiraling lines condition that substance into different pressure zones. So there's wound up intelligent energy that looks to us like matter and like photons and suns and planets, and there's spread out intelligent energy that looks to us like space. But in fact, there is neither space nor matter. There is only intelligent energy.
Okay.
And what conditions that intelligent energy into what we see as all this multiplicity of form are the upward and downward spirals, are the mother and father lights. I'm sorry, the mother and father lights.
Okay.
Does that seem manageable? Does that land for you too?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so too.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I hit a point where just a saturation point where it was like, I'm getting it, I'm full.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it made sense. And one thing that stood out to me was on 248. At the top of 248, it says matter registers the potential of the position of its birth. That made sense to me in terms of like creating individuality, like just sort of looking back, at the table of elements, the wiggle that he made,
Yeah.
that like there's a diversity of qualities, but only through kind of one expression. I don't really get it yet, but I'm just like, okay, there's only, I guess it seems like there's only kind of one thing happening, but that one thing creates all of this possible potential, and where something like is birthed along that line of potential creates its qualities or something like that, and the individuality, separateness, and multiplicity. And something that pinged for me as well was that again, that sentence, matter registers the potential of the position of its birth, reminds me of like an astrological reading, like where you were in the solar system or in the galactic cycle on the moment of birth, at least according to that system, determines so many things about your qualities, which is fascinating. I don't study astrology, but that was just like, oh, that seems connected.
That's a really great metaphor, BJ. That really helps me think about what he's talking about there. Yeah, I like that. comparison to astrology.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and then so what Walter Russell says is that there's 18 dimensions, what he calls dimensions of matter, and it's the 18 possible qualities of matter. There's width, breadth, and length. There's time. There's sex. There's valence. There's, I can't ramble them all off now, but there's basically like there's only 18 possible qualities of all matter. But when those qualities complex, when they form into like cells and people and planets, and when they complex,
Right.
there's so much diversity that's available through those 18 qualities or dimensions. And I take that to mean in the mind, body, spirit system of understanding creation, that's the body. That's all that's possible in the play of form, is made up of these 18 qualities. And then the mind is what we think about that. It's what we think about. It's what we think about, the at least the portion of the mind that that contemplates what we experience in the body. And then the spirit is kind of what connects all of that back to its source or something. Anyway, this is just my attempt to try to like build a bridge from what you were just saying about matter registering the potentials of the position of its birth into the sort of synthesized version of this whole thing and how it connects to Ra's mind, body, spirit term. Sorry, I know that was a lot.
That's
Well,
great. I like that
made
you
sense.
keep connecting it to the archetypes.
Right. And then one more, I know I've already said a lot, but I'll just say one more thing. And I think I've said this before, which is, Walter Russell's system kind of depicts the 18 archetypal qualities of matter or bodies. And then Ra, presents this corresponding system of the 22 archetypal qualities of mind or fundamental ways that our mental process in third density is made up of or something. And I feel like those two systems are parallel to each other. I feel like they might even interpenetrate or relate somehow. I'm curious to explore that more. It's just a hunch right now.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that Walter Russell gives an archetypal system for matter, and Ra gives an archetypal system for mind. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Well, any final, I know it was a whirlwind. We covered so much, but are there any final thoughts or ideas or questions either of you want to say?
I just really appreciate being able to discuss this with you with the terms of the law of one. And it's made so much more sense to be able to do that. And I appreciate all of your work to help me understand this. If I had thought at the beginning when I was asking all those questions of this study that I'd be sitting here talking to you like this, I would have said, something's working. Because at that point I thought, I'm lost. But now I'm found.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so glad that you're.
Yeah, it's a process we've all shared together, and it's helped me a lot.
Yeah, awesome. That's really nice to hear, Jim. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, I'm glad you stuck with it. I had a hunch that something was gonna click through, because when I first started studying Ra, it was similar for me. I was like, I'm lost. What are they talking about? I don't get this. But I just kind of, like I said several sessions ago, I would just like kind of let it wash over me, not need to understand it. And eventually like it just, something started clicking. So
Yeah.
it's gratifying to hear
stick
that.
with it.
Yeah.
Well, it reminds me, just to share this with you, Jim, when we were doing the session at Homecoming where you were doing the Q&A and you were responding to people's questions, I forget what question someone asked you, but you were giving a really lovely, in my opinion, was lovely, enjoyable answer. It was entirely based in your understanding of the law of one, but I swear to you that for like 5 minutes straight, every word out of your mouth could have been describing the secret of light. Like, it was
Wow.
amazing to me. It was just like, wow, Jim gets the secret of light. Obviously, he just doesn't know he does.
It's in there.
Yeah, it's in there. I really do feel like these systems are compatible and describing the same fundamental quality of the mystery that we all share. So thanks you too. Thank you so much for leaning in together and helping me too to understand this stuff.
Well, it's a group effort.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Those of like mind who together seek shall far more surely find.
Yes.
Yes.
I feel that so much.
Yes. If there's a recording of that thing that you were just talking about, it would be cool to go back and listen to it, or I'd like to listen to it.
There is a recording. I don't know what I don't know what they do with it. I don't know if they just transcribe it, or I don't know how it.
I'm not sure either, because I wasn't expecting to be recorded, but Austin went ahead and recorded the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it'll probably end up on the website, I would guess.
Yeah. I can follow up with Austin, BJ, and see, and I'll let you know.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah. All right, you two. I love you. I appreciate you. This was really fun for me.
Yep. I love you both too. And I look forward to our next meeting. Nothing
We're
will
going
keep
to
me.
hang out, just the three of us.
Yeah. All right. Well,
See you soon.
you have a good night.
Yeah. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.